There you have it.
Thank you, Professor Chris.
Mhm.
All right, Melody, I think you're up.
Yep, I am only going first because Don asked me to, because women are water protectors. Women are intimately connected to water in different ways. And I will talk a little bit about that. And I don't want to go on forever. So I'm just going to do a spiel, and then each of the others will go, and then we'll have we'll talk amongst ourselves and then answer any questions. So now for us, I mean, if you just think about water, just in general, for any human being or anything, any person on this planet, which is anything part of creation, right? So we heard about Don's chipmunk story this morning, being very loud near his sweetgrass. All those are people for us. And so water is the foundation of life. We are both created in it and we are sustained by it. So without it, you can't really do much, right? So I saw it once, someone said, well, you know, why do we always look for, when we look for life on other planets, we always look to see if there's water. There's a reason for that. And so as a woman, I am intimately connected to water in a different way as a creator. And so like right now I am in my second trimester and I'm expecting for December. And I have a 2-year-old, so I'm rethinking. I was like, oh no, this is going to be fun now that she's starting to act differently. But anyway, so essentially the baby is in its own little puddle being created. And that's how we all start. We all start in our own little pool, and it sustains us, it creates us. And my chief always says that if you want to know the history of who you are and all of your ancestors, how far back do you go? And for us, he always talks about, you go to the womb and you look at the different transformation of the fetus and how you start as cells and you work your way up, and you have your tail all the way to all the different iterations of evolution. And in the end, what happens? The baby comes out and the mother baptizes it. So with her own water. And so we are born perfect, as the medicine person for Don's group always says, that we are born perfect and we always go back to that through ceremony, which is our way to reconnect to place, to people, to belonging. And if you think about things like, what is a sweat lodge, right? For instance, how do you go back to perfection and cleanse yourself and cleanse your body? You use water heated on rocks, and the vapor, the steam comes up, and it purifies you. And you basically go into a womb and then you come out again perfect, just like your mother made you. So I like to think I'm perfect. I'm just kidding. As I was driving this morning trying to drop off my 2-year-old, I know that I'm not perfect because I said some words trying to get through traffic. But anyway, and one of the things that I want to mention is that in the beginning, so one of our creation stories is that as Tabeldoc, who is the owner, as he created the world, he just basically, think of it like the ball of the earth, right? And there's nothing on it. And then as he dusted his hands, out of the dust, Adziotso formed himself, who you might know as Gluskabi. Adziotso is the man that made himself. And as he grew out of the dust, Tabeldoc said, wow, you're wonderful. Who are you? He said, well, I'm Adziotso. I'm the man who made myself. And he's like, okay, great. You can take it from here. And so Adziotso is the transformer. And as he rolled and as he jumped and created everything, he formed the mountains and he formed the valleys, and he filled it all in with water, and he filled it all in with people. And for us, like I was telling you before, everything that's part of creation is a person. And so At the end of Gluskabe's work, well, the end is always a beginning for us too. So Gluskabe still sits, and after he made the world the way it is so that the Abenaki people could thrive here, not just survive, but thrive, he sat down in Patalbagak, which you know is Lake Champlain, and he still sits there and he watches over all of us, all of his people, from the little creepy crawlies to the fin to the winged to all the human beings that were here, and we watch over this place. And so it's very fitting that he sat down in water and he watches over all of us. And a few years ago, when I had attended, there was an equal rights amendment meeting, and we were talking about what to do. What would it look like? Is it possible? And as everybody was going through all of what they were hoping for, my responsibility and my obligation as someone who protects this place, as someone whose creator placed them here, I had to bring up the personhood of all things. And specifically, I mentioned, what about the personhood of the lake? What about the personhood of all the rivers? What about the personhood of all of the water that sustains us through here? And so I thought it was that everybody just sort of blinked at me. But that was my obligation and my responsibility to speak for them. And so when we talk about water, we're not just talking about water, we're talking about something that has spirit, something that runs through all of us and enhances our own spirit. And then we merge together, and it's a beautiful thing. And I hope that helps illuminate it just a little bit. But we're gonna talk more about water and what that means. And I want to make sure that Rich and Dawn have opportunities to do their thing too. So thank you for listening to me. And whoever wants to go next, Dawn or Rich, go ahead.
Rich can go.
So we, of course, Wuli Wuni Melody, Utsi, Uli Kluza Wonganal, thank you for your good words. I'd like to introduce myself to all of you. Thank you for being here in the language of this land, the Western Abenaki language, of which I'm a student. The language holds a lot of understandings, and it's important to access those if you're able to. And I'm going to use this as a way of explaining a few things. So I'll start by saying Ukwai Nidombak Paakwinong Guzian and we go down Namiolan Pamgisigak in Delewizi Lisal Ta Indaiwa Tastigak Tali Sukwakik Nia Elnu Wombanaki. So what I said to you is, hello, my friends, in the language that comes from this place. It's good to see you. It's good to be here with you. I am called Rich Holschuh. That's a German last name. My father's family is 100% German as far as I know. And it goes way, way back in one little village in the middle of Germany. My mother's family is much more complex. I am of a place that you know as Brattleboro, down in the southeast corner of the state on the Connecticut River, traditionally known as Wontastagok, and I'll explain why that is. And when I introduce myself to you in the Abenaki language, I am not saying that I am from this place. I am saying that I am this place. And that is a crucial observation for how things work in the world. As Melody has made clear, we are all connected. We are all part of each other. And I am this place, and this place is myself. Think about that. So the Abenaki language, or the Abenaki language, or the Abenaki language, or the Abernaki language, if you're from Vermont, you'll hear that. These are all the same word, voiced by different people in different places based on their experience, where they come from, because we are what we have experienced, and we all create our own realities in our heads. And to the degree that some of those realities are shared, we share a mutual understanding of a way of being in the world. The Abenaki way of being in the world is one such way. Each individual within that group has their own way of being in the world. And so I welcome you and who you are and what you know and what you bring to this conversation. And I speak for myself, but I am also part of a community. So all of these pronunciations come from the original word, Wombanaki, which means Dawnland. That's where we are. We're right here in the Dawnland, in the eastern part of this continent, where the sun strikes first, when our grandfather, Gisus, Namahom Gisus, comes up every morning and we say, Wuli Wuni, thank you. It's good to see you again. Glad you came back. Where would we be without you? We would not be here without our grandparents. We owe ourselves to them, and the ones before them, and the ones before them. And so this is all about continuity, and it is about connection. And that is what water speaks to us of. Water connects us. We are all connected through the water. The water that is here now has been here for millions of years. We are that water. We are the past incarnate. And what we do with that water, what we decide to do with it, is going today, in our decisions that we make today, are going to create the future. This is a great responsibility, and this is a great honor. And water is the thing that pulls us together, holds us together, as Melody has, very well explained. I'm going to use the language a little bit to try to describe how this works as far as a worldview goes. In the Abenaki language, there are different words used for water. Some cultures find something certainly more important than others, and so they will find multiple ways of expressing it where others may not see it as that complex. It's pretty simple. It's water, right? It's water. It's wet. Deal with it. There's a lot more to it than that. It is imbued with spirit. It is life itself. In the word typically used for water, as you saw in the little film that you previewed, is nebi. Nebi is water. And it is the root word in our word for medicine. Medicine being anything that promotes vitality and health, not necessarily a pill, or probably not a pill, not necessarily an herb or a plant, a medicinal plant. It is anything that promotes vitality. That is family, that is good food, that is friendship, that is sunshine. These are all good medicine. And so that word nebi shows up in the word for medicine, and that word is nebisun. And so you see that water is at the heart of medicine. Water is the first medicine, and everything is based on water if you want to promote vitality amongst yourselves and all of those who are around us. And everyone is a person, not just the human beings. And so they matter just as much. We are on a circle. We're not in the middle. So that's the word for the materiality itself, nebi. But it takes different forms. Spirit takes different forms, and it is constantly changing from one form into another. That's what time is. It is change. Time doesn't really exist. It's just change. One thing is turning into another thing all the time. That's, basic Western science. Energy and matter are conserved. Everything is the same. We're all part of each other. We just change through time. And water is that vehicle, one of those vehicles for life. So what forms does water take? Well, there's two primary forms of water that you see in the Abenaki language describing where the water is, how it is. And those words are bak, B-A-G or K, B-A-G-W. And that is pronounced bak. And we see that root word in the name for Champlain. B-Town Bonk. B-Town Bonk, the water in between. It's a name for that place. And water that is taking the form of bak, and you hear that little puff of air at the end, bak. It is a kind of water. It is water that is filling a space. It is pretty much like a body, a still massing of water. And we use that word for lakes. We use that word for ponds, bak. And then there's a different word for water that is in motion, dynamic water, imbued with energy. And that word is tuk, tuk, and has that same little puff of air at the end. We see that root word showing up in the words for the Connecticut River, the Quenetuk, Quenetuk, the river that I am a part of here, and which gives this place its name, the Wantastuk, Wantastuk, the Ashwellet River across to the east of me, directly east of me, the Ashwellet River, Asowelok, and Kantuk, Kantuk, I'm sorry, Kantuk, from which we get Kantakuk. The word morphs into a place name, but based on what it embodies. And what I find fascinating at the end of both of these little root words is that little KW at the end, or GW, that little puff of air. We see this showing up in the language throughout when it is describing the essence of something, the essence of it. It will end in this little puff of air. And if you are familiar with some of the concepts of vibration and air and movement and sound as being a creative force, you will see that that little puff of air, that little breath that you are exhaling at the end of that word, is telling you that we are speaking of essence here. Critical essence, what is it made of? Bak, tuk. It shows up in the language, the materiality of it. And when I say materiality, I'm not just talking about the way it's written, because Abenaki language is a spoken language. It is spoken out into the air with your breath. We exchange breath with each other, just as we share the water that has always been here. It's all the same water, and it's all connected. And what you do in one place upstream is going to go downstream. And so these decisions matter, how we go about things. It all matters. We're all connected. Water is that connector. Indigenous people are described in the dictionary as the original people of a place, the land and water in a particular place. That's who they are. They are that place, and the place is them. They are together. They are the same thing. And they often will share the same name. That's how that plays out. So if you are from here, Wantastagok, you are Wantastagok. That's how you call yourself. If you're Nohegan, up on that river, you are a Noheganok. You are that place. Don will talk about that later. You are that place, and it is the river that is at the heart of your identity, your community, yourself. You are that place, and the river matters the most. And a homeland for a particular group, a territory, if you will, is defined by the watershed. It is all of the water of that place. That is who you are. That is who you are responsible for. And I say who, not what. Who, that's who you're responsible for, because it has animacy, it has spirit. When you pluralize the words tuk and bak in the language, which is not a gendered language, it does not use gender, such as French or Spanish. It is a language of animacy. And so we use an animate plural ending with a K. We recognize that these are animate entities, and we treat them that way. How do you know that? If you grow up in the culture, this is just who you are. It's baked right into you. It's the water that you swim in. If you're learning the language, like me, who has been struggling with this for years, and it's starting to make some sense. It's a pretty challenging undertaking, especially at my age. I'm not a spring chicken. I'm not even a summer chicken at this point. But I am grateful for learning these lessons. I am a lifelong learner, and I plan on continuing that. I'm glad to have you here with me, with all of us, so we can learn together. I will stop there, so there's more to talk about later, and I will hand the talking stick over to Chief Don Liwani. Thank you.
Wait, Rich. We were picking on Mel before, saying it's best I go last because I tend to be long-winded as an individual and as a chief. So I will try to be stay within the parameters of my time.
Wonder if there's a way that you get the camera to zoom in closer. Chris, maybe give them a tap out there. It's just for people online, you're kind of in the chat. Let's see.
Well, going back to while they're working on that, what Rich was saying, we are from the Nulhegan tribe. We were the Nulheganocks, which means place of the wooden deadfall traps, which was on the rivers. Just like Missisquoi, place of the flint, which is also Missisquoi River. Winooski, place where the wild onion grows. We are the place, and the place is us. So, I mean, Rich hit that right on the nail on the head, and hence why waterways are so important. Am I just supposed to look at the screen? Is that what you want me to do?
Yes, because then they can see you, and I will do this.
Okay.
For you. You see everybody. So you can look at
Wow,
all.
there you go. So I would like to kind of tie everything together of what Mel and Rich were speaking about.
Sorry, one more thing. Oh, right.
Nope. Go ahead, do your thing, Chris.
I gotta do it from.
All right. So I'd like to tie things in with what Mel was saying and what Rich was saying. So when the water was always here, when Tabaldak came to the earth, it was covered in ice. And I won't go into that story, but you know, when they were working on trying to find water, you know, the sun was created and you have the moon and it melted the water. So the water was the first thing that was on the earth before the land, before the mountains, before people. Do I need to do something with this, Chris?
I always do this to you.
See, there's a way to keep me quiet, you know?
Sorry.
No, it's all good. So anyway, so water is the lifeblood that flows through all living things. It is the web of life. It is think of Mother Earth. This planet is Mother Earth, and the water is the blood that runs through her veins. And what happens with blood? You have arteries and veins. You know, when you have toxins in your veins, it goes through a process and filters out and becomes good again. And that's recycles within your body. Well, Mother Earth is no different. She does her best to filter the toxins and other things that are put into her body. So going back to what Mel was saying, and if you watch Nebe, water is a finite amount, right? There's only so much water on this planet. It goes up into the air, it falls down as rain, and it touches things, it evaporates again, it goes far away, it comes back again. And this cycle of purification and lifting the pure water to the heavens and then going into the earth and purifying it and then coming back out. has happened for millions of years. It connects every living thing. So when it goes through plants, when it goes through animals, and when it goes through humans, and then it leaves their body and it goes back up into the air, into the sky, and touches the spirits, and then falls back down as rain and absorbs into Mother Earth, where it's connected. It connects the sky to the earth, and it goes into the ground. And when it comes out of that ground, it's like breast milk to us. We are nourished by that water, and hence why a lot of our ceremonial sites are coming from springs, because that is the breast milk coming from our mother, that's pure, that's been purified, that's been filtered, that we drink right from the spring. If you know, springs are one of the most pure water that you can ever get when it comes out of the ground. Just like water with Brattleboro, like what Rich was saying with the petroglyphs, where people, it was a spiritual place where they put the faces in the rocks, because that was a very special and sacred place, because water to us is the thing that sustains our lives. So as water goes in and out and touches every living thing, it leaves the essence of that thing that it touches, right? So it's the web of life, it's the glue. So when you are conceived by your mother and your father, where he presents many choices to your mother, she picks one, right? It's the fastest, the strongest. She's picked you all to be her daughter or, son. And we won't get into then, she does a bunch of things, but going back into the womb. So as you continue to grow inside your mother, that's why women hold those water ceremonies, because they're intimately related with water. So as they grow, everything that water that's inside her body has touched is now being absorbed into your DNA as a child. You are touching the thousands of ancestors that came before you and their knowledge that came with that. You are touching the animals that connects you to the animals that sustains your life. You are connected to the trees that have absorbed this water. You are connected to the earth, the mother. So all of these things are being absorbed into you until you are ready. And then as soon as you're ready, you come out and you are baptized the first time your mother's water breaks over you. You either live or die at that point, but that is the first time you are baptized into this world, because that is a cleansing. And as Mel said, that's why we go into the womb of Mother Earth, and why we go into the sweat lodge to purify us, to bring us out. And women are the keeper of those water ceremonies, because they are intimately connected to the water. They are the keepers of the water. So after all of these things have absorbed into you, that is how we're connected to life. If you only open your ears, your heart, and your eyes so you can see these things, you can look at an animal and relate to it, because essence of water has gone through those animals, the spirits of those. Way back when, we could actually talk to the trees and the animals. Humans have lost their way. We always strive as Native people to get back to that purity, because like Mel said, when you come out of the womb, you are pure. Just like our teachers, our medicine people tell us, we are pure. We do not judge. We have a big heart. Children are the most honest that I know. And they're the most loving. It is humans who are the problem, because as we interject human things become unpure. I always tend to look at it, and it may not sound right, but we're almost like the drug dealers of Mother Earth. Like, we inject her with stuff, with poisons. I mean, look at even this Mountain Dew, this water that was in here was pure. Well, why isn't that good enough for us? Because we want to put chemicals inside it, make it taste good, and then get us addicted to this thing. And the reason I love it is because I am addicted to it. And where water is much better for me than this. And I, as a environmentalist, should not drink that. But it's easy to drink it and I like to drink it and it's hard to stop. So by putting this stuff into Mother Earth, it's almost like a junkie putting heroin into Mother Earth's veins. We keep putting fracking, we keep poisoning Mother Earth, we keep pushing toxins into her. And she will adjust, she will detox. Whether we survive that detox is another story. Look what's happening in Yellowstone. Look what that just happened. Look what's happening in different places. By interjecting that toxin into her, she cannot filter it as fast as we are destroying it. So that's why we have water that are polluted. Humans love to fix things. We will try to create chlorine tablets instead of fixing the root cause. I've never seen a chickadee that could pick up a chlorine tablet and put it in the water, or a deer. I mean, they cannot harm the earth. Only we can. That's why we have a responsibility as stewards to protect the earth, because we're the ones that can destroy it. And instead of trying to find ways to fix it through a Band-Aid, we need to get to the root cause and make it pure. So we can drink from that breast milk of our mother from the springs. We have clean water. So we don't have to worry about this kind of stuff, right? I bring that here just because, well, one, I'm thirsty, but B, I just want people to understand that this is not a normal process. This is something humans did. And just like what we're trying to do with these projects, we're trying to fix things. We're hoping that we can maybe be water and put vitamins in it, right? So instead of putting heroin in Mother Earth's veins, we're putting maybe some vitamins, but we're still putting in something that's not pure. So how do we get back to the purity? Because like I said, whether we survive this transition or not, that is to be seen. But she will always be here. When we are gone, they will naturally filter out, except for the things that take millions of years to cleanse itself. But look at what happened in Chernobyl when we had a nuclear meltdown. You have trees there, you have animals there, but you don't have humans. They are still thriving. Now, are they sick? Do they live shorter lives? Yes. But that has Mother Earth has reclaimed what was once bad and now is reclaiming it back to a state where she can try to purify that. So eventually, maybe someday, it'll be a normal place, but no humans are there, right? Where that happened. But there is water, there is animals, there are trees. So I guess my point being is that when we are looking at these projects, how do we get as close back to the purity as we can? Or how do we help Mother Earth to filter those things that need to be filtered and not just find Band-Aid fixes to try to figure out how do we actually make a change to do the right thing instead of it being a Band-Aid fix for a year or two, and then it just keeps getting worse. And part of our problem is we don't get our young people involved with the earth anymore, or the soil, their food sources, their spiritual sources, their water sources. They're stuck on video games, they're inside. So when we ask the next generation to take over from us, they will not understand how to grow their food. They will not understand what water means to them. They think they just drink it out of a bottle or they get it from the water fountain. They don't think of it coming from the earth. We can't drink water out of the ground anymore, except for a spring. We used to be able to drink out of a brook when we were fishing as a kid. We'd drink out of it and not worry about it. We can't do that anymore. Acid rain, we need to get our children involved so that way they are invested in what we do. So that way they can understand and have a connection to it, to protect, to get our kids back to where they were when they were in the womb, where they understood that connection to animals. They understood the connection to trees. They understood the connection to our ancestors. They understood all these things. And water is such a powerful thing. It's magical to us. So not only is it breast milk that comes out of the bosom of Mother Earth that we drink, There's a whole world underneath the water. Gitzigog, the underwater serpent. When you look at a lake or a pond, all you see is the surface, but there's so many things underneath it. It's a whole world all to its own, just underneath the surface. There's a whole community and colony of fish, mussels, seaweed, everything that grows underneath the earth. I mean, under the water that you don't even see. So not only is it coming from the sky in a magical way of hitting you in the face and understanding it and filtering through the earth, so you pull it from the earth, it's also on the earth. It's also a whole world that relies on that. And we are the people that also pollute that, right? With our oil and our boats and our gas and all these things. Humans are really destructive, but we can also be really responsible to try to help get it back to where it needs to be. I wish I had the answers. I mean, we see what's happening with the calamities, with the thunderstorms, with the, you know, all of the things that are the floods, the heavy rains, the hurricanes. I mean, Mother Earth is trying to detoxify itself. And the more we try to prevent that, like try to correct for it, the more without changing our habits, the more intense it's going to be, the more she's going to try to detox, the more we're trying to combat it. So we're in a constant struggle with our mother right now. And as you know, your mother's going to win eventually. You know, you can badmouth and you can talk back to your mom, but eventually she's going to give you an attitude adjustment, right? It's just whether it's too late, you know, before you can learn that lesson. And we're at those stages right now where the rebellious children that are not really paying attention to our mother, not giving her what she needs. And she is starting to get angry. And pretty soon she's going to give us a slap down. I don't know about your mother, but she didn't spare the rod. Okay. I was spoiled sometimes, but she didn't spare the rod, and you know, and it gave me a course correction now and then. But I'm saying Mother Earth is doing that. And it's really affecting us, but some people are just trying to throw money at it. So I'm going to stop there, but I just want you to kind of get the point that not only does water connect us to our ancestors and every living being, but there's whole worlds that are underneath the water, and it comes from the sky, and it's without water. You can grow food with water, just water, like hydroponics. You can't do that with just earth. You know, it has a magical life of its own, a spiritual connection. And that's how we're able to even have children, right? Like Mel, you know, growing a baby inside of her. I mean, how much more magical is that, right? And it's all being done through water. So anyway, that is the spiritual essence and connection that connects us to all living things, connects us to our ancestors, connects us to our future, because our future children will be drinking the same water that's passing through us right now. Hopefully it's not Mountain Dew. Or I shouldn't say that, or any type of drink. I shouldn't say the name, because all of a sudden somebody from Mountain Dew is listening and they're going to get mad at me. I do like Mountain Dew. So anyway, I'm just saying, I'm just saying that it is our future as well as our past. And if we're not paying attention, we won't have that future to be able to give to the next generation. Or if we do, our children are going to be all messed up, because what we absorb, the children do too. Because the mother, as you know, whatever your mother is feeding her child while it's being inside of her is how the child is going to be affected. And if we have a lot of toxins that we put into our children, they're going to have that result of an altered state. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Don, and Melody and Rich. I'm sort of flexible in format. I don't know if I have a question ready to go. So I have a question ready to go, but I've talked enough already. So I open the floor, Rich or Melody, if you want to jump in, or we're sort of flexible and just seeing how this goes.
I just have one thing to mention, is that as Don said so eloquently about what we're doing to Mother Earth, if people would just stop and listen to the original peoples of every place and what they say to do, that's what you should do. If you want to live in relationship with a place, you should look at the worldview of the people who are there as caretakers, who have been placed there to take care of it and to love it. And so that is a whole other, it's a whole other way of being and looking at the world when you walk a little softer, when you see everything as people. And if you want to know, for me, if you want to look at your relationship with the people, the original peoples that are in a particular place, you should look at the ways that you manage the water systems. And if you can't be successful in the original relationship that you have with the oldest relationship, right? Between Native people and between others who came, then what chance of success do you have with any other group of people? And for me, the state of how I see relations sometimes is I look at what's happening, especially in what you know as of Lake Champlain. I remember coming back from Virginia because I was there for a couple of years with my spouse, who's in the military, and I remember going down to Burlington High School because they have that awesome program about the lake. And I always love to work with those students. Typically, there are a lot of first generation Americans there, and it's wonderful to help them understand how people connect to place and people and how everyone can make a home together as a community here. And what does that mean to love a place like we do? And so I remember I went back, we went to North Beach, and they're like, don't touch the water though. There was this massive leak of sewage. And I was like, okay. And I keep seeing this same thing pop up, and nothing makes me more angry than thinking about our creator, Gluskabi, sitting in people's poop. Like, I gotta be honest. Like, fix it, man. Like, why, what are you doing? And so if you want to know about the relationship with Native people, those are the things that I care about. Is if you want to help fix your relationship with us, fix your relationship with the world around you too. So I'm going to get off my pedestal and my high horse right now. So other people, if you have questions, go ahead. Or if anyone has anything else to say.
I quickly want to say, to kind of bounce off what Mel was saying, is that we are in a relationship with the water.
Describe what?
We are in a relationship with the water. It was our food source. It is our food source. It was our transportation. It was how we got around in the winter. It was it was our ice. You know, I mean, we have an intimate relationship with water. I mean, Rich keeps going back to, I mean, when he was saying we are around watersheds, that's what defined who we were. It was our watersheds. You know, being connected with what we're trying to do here today with the Native people is to give you that perspective, to get you back connected to your watershed or back to your relationship with water. Because whether you know it or not, you are intimately related to the water. And you have a relationship with it. You just may not know what that looks like. So, or maybe you do. You had some questions?
I have a question, but I want to see if other people have questions. Should I just go? So, oh, you have your hand up? Yeah, great.
Wait, don't do it until you have this.
Don't do it.
If you don't have a microphone.
Okay. So yes, I'm Peter Danforth of the Moyle County Conservation District. Thank you, Don, Rich, Melody, for your perspective. And I think you asked a question, Don, about what can make these projects better or work with clean water. And I found that with the work I'm doing right now, that the ones that are successful are the ones where I have a community engaged in it. So there's sort of ownership over what we're doing. I think it's really important. It's actually the most important thing is to get everyone on board. And after listening to you now sort of explain the language about water from an Indigenous perspective, I feel like could be another anchor. I mean, it is an anchor to help with that community building, and it helps me look at it in a different way, and I really appreciate that.
It goes
So-
back to our ancient way of being, is that community is connected to that place and that watershed. So by engaging in them, they are invested and engaged in the place that they live, the watershed. And that's why it becomes more important, just like our ancient ancestors and us today, is that you are reconnecting them back to
Right.
that source.
Right.
And that's why it's successful.
Right, exactly. You know, and having worked with the conservation district for a while, and I've been reintroduced to that way of thinking, and I always think of things in terms of a watershed now, for the most part, because of that. But thank you.
So my question for the three of you is about a sense of place, and particularly I'm thinking about the connection between some of the people that are here in the room and online. The Act 76 work that's going to be happening is going to be engaged in standing up projects that will be, connected to rivers, stream banks or floodplains or things like that. And I would be interested to hear more from you about your perspective, or your connection specifically to stream banks, or, like, is there a special, were settlements like on riverbanks? And I think I know the answer to that, but I'm just sort of prompting like what I'm trying to think about, like what should the partners be thinking about as we're thinking about projects in these places that you might be connected to as well?
Yeah, I'll quickly say something. I'll let Mel and Rich jump in. That we, as I mentioned, in the winter, we are Kusak, the pine people of the pine. In the winter, we would be in the pines. We would hunt big game, and it's harder to get waterfowl and fish and other things. So we would live in the pines, and where the deer yard, the yard and pine, because there's less snow. So that's where would be our food source. But as soon as the water broke and the floods came through, it left rich, fertile soil on the banks, and they were easy to till with making mounds. You had your fish to put fertilizer. You could now you could paddle up and down the rivers and lakes to go visit and trade and all those things, which made things easier to walk instead of walking through, 2.5 feet of snow. So that was our place. So villages, burials, they weren't right on the river, but it's like anything. Do you build your house in a floodplain? No, you would build your house a little above the river. So that way, if it flooded or the water came in, you wouldn't flood your house, but you were still close enough to have quick access to the water. If you think of the way we lived in the same manner. We were close enough to the water, but we're above it. So that way we wouldn't get flooded out. So when archaeological sites when you're working along those stream beds, and as you know, rivers change over time and things move because it's a living thing, that you have to be very conscious that when you are doing these projects, that they are required, that if they are digging a tree and they find an artifact or they're doing something, that falls, they should alert us, because you could be getting into a burial ground, you could be getting into a village, you could be doing all kinds of things. So as you're promoting digging or adding things along the riverbanks and the streams, not only should you be conscious about potential artifacts that you might come across, but also plant things in a way that would feed us. Agroforestry, plant edibles, blackberry bushes, plant nut trees, plant those things that are not only good for humans, but good for animals, because they need to eat too. So when you're working on these projects, think of as if you had to live there and eat there. And if you had to work there, what would that look like? So you have to build that indigenous way of being into your projects, or else you're just going to stuff a tree in there and hopefully it works. You have to build that in. Mel, Rich, do you want to add to that, or what you want to?
Rich, go ahead.
You want me to go first? Okay. You asked a good question there, Chris, and speaking for myself again, before I can dig into a project and figure out what is the right thing to do in that place, I try to understand what's actually happening. I think in terms of metaphor, I guess. And yeah, sometimes it takes me a while to get to a solid place of making a decision, but I have to work through these things first. I have to know what the values are that are informing the situation. And so when you talk about riverbanks, stream banks, restoration projects, the first thing that comes to my mind is that these are places of intersection. This is where the water and the land come together. And it is at places of intersection that change happens. And that is kind of underneath the idea that, we know how important wetlands are. We know how important estuaries are. This is where all of the magic happens. Is where things begin. It's where things end, where things are filtered out, where the next generation begins, where wet places, wetlands, swamps are the medicine gardens. It's where all the biodiversity is. It's where we go to find the plants that we work with, that we live with. This comes out in the language. The English language is a language that is about 2/3 nouns. We don't think about it because we use it every day, and so we like to name things here. It's a language of objectification, and so we name things. This is a marsh. This is a swamp. This is a river. This is a stream, and they're all separate from each other. And we put these labels on them. Whereas the Abenaki language is a language of verbs. It is 2/3 verbs, and it speaks of action and it speaks of change, and it helps us to understand what is happening in the moment, in between the parties that are in this transaction, this relationship. And so edges are places of change. They are places of action, and they're places of relationship. And we want to pay really close attention there, because whatever we do there is going to inform everything around it, as Don was saying. These things are all connected, and it's not just a tree planting project. It's a lot more than that. What kind of tree is that? Does it belong there? Is it going to be happy there? Are we thinking of the things that are not just right in front of our faces, the things that are invisible, the entire system? We also recognize in Abenaki worldview that we are surface dwellers. We live on this surface, this place of intersection. The word in the language is uskit kami kwinoak. We are surface dwellers. We are earthlings. We are at this place of intersection where the sky world meets the underworld, and we're on the surface world. And we have to be paying attention to all of these things at the same time, not just what's in front of your nose. You are centered in space. You're not on a line, you are in space. And there are other ones all the way around you. And you have to think holistically. And so when I look at restoring a riverbank, I got to back it up to understand, what am I actually doing here? What am I being presented with? What is my responsibility here? Not just to myself and to you as human beings, but all of the beings around us, all of these other people, the fish people, the eagle people. They matter too. And when I look at them, as Mel, points out often, they are looking back at me, and they are asking me in their own way, what are you going to do? So it's kind of a big deal. It's also a great honor, and it's a great responsibility. Melody, take it away.
Well, that was good. And so, and I would ask you know, sometimes the answer to moving forward is in the past. And so sometimes the most traditional practices and why people did things a certain way is what I would start with, right? I remember there was a conference, I think it was at Echo, and they were trying to talk about sustainability in the lake and farming practices and how to move forward. And they wanted us to do maybe a land acknowledgement or something. And I was like, okay, so we've been here for about 10,000 years or so since, you know, Creator put us here. If you want to know how to live sustainably, you should ask us. Who are the presenters? And there weren't any. And through the Seven Sisters Project, we've been working to understand and help others to understand that the ways that we farmed, for instance, the floodplain agriculture can be right up against, you know, water, the banks, and it doesn't leach into the water. So, and we sustain thousands of people in villages and hundreds of people, depending on the village, from these farming practices. And so why couldn't a single family farm do the same thing? And so for me, when I think about projects that could be done, I think that's a good way to start with all that stuff being leached into the rivers and the waters. Look at, and you know, if there's other projects, I would ask the space, what does it want to be? What was it traditionally? And I mean, someone asked Rich and I once, you know, this piece of property here, like, we're not even doing anything with it. And Rich was like, it is itself. So like, it's being that place, right? And so why do you need to transform it? What does it want to be? How has it grown? So I don't know. I don't know if that helps you, but that's what I at least think about at the very beginning.
Yeah, and I also want to say, along with what Rich was saying, is that when you're looking at these projects, how do you determine success? The health of the watershed. So where are you thinking you should cut all the trees and so people can kayak up and down it? You know, then you destroy all the habitat for the trout who was using that as a home, or was catching some of the big stuff that when there was a flood wouldn't make it into the lake. Right. I did see something about on the chat where the line was. You have to understand, we didn't have animals, we didn't spread manure all along our fields so that way our crops would grow and it leaches into the water. We used fish. I mean, if it had bone meal, it was fertilizer. I mean, that's something that comes from the river anyway, right? So, I mean, we weren't you know, when we talk about traditional farming practices, I mean, even sometimes some of these proposals are looking at taking milfoil or other things out of the lake that's a nuisance, and that's captured all of this phosphorus, how do you turn that into fertilizer? You know, or how do you, without burning your plants, or how do you reuse something that's bad in the lake and turn it into something good, right? So I'm just saying is I would love that part of these projects is also not restoring just the stream banks, but checking out restoring the habitat and putting fish and working with the Fish and Wildlife, making habitat for the turtles, making habitat for the fish. And that's how you're going to judge your success, because if they die off in a year, you know, then probably you weren't successful. If they start to expand and grow and continue increasing, and now you're bringing the osprey in, now you're bringing the eagles, now you're bringing other things in that are relying on that food source, you're going to know how successful you are. So I would look at it again, like Rich said, as a holistic approach, not just the stream banks, but how do you restore the rivers, and all of those things that would either catch pollutants or create a way to filter those things, and not just look at what, like planting a tree. It's the whole, again, what Rich was saying, it's the holistic view of a place. And how do you return it back to its purity of how it was in the past? Because that's what made it successful, the purity of the way it was in the past.
May I ask a question?
Please.
So it might be a rich question, I'm not sure. I'm just thinking about the English language and the fact that the field, the department that I sit in is environment and natural resources, and thinking about the words natural resources, I feel like it's an extraction statement. It's a word for people to utilize something. So I'm just wondering, does the Abenaki language have the word natural resources, or is it habitat or animal or other things that are referencing that thing that isn't the human extraction angle?
Well, I just keep saying, you keep saying extraction. That's a mindset of a European person.
Yeah.
Like, we had natural resources, we just didn't kill it. Like, we didn't take it away. Like, natural resource was the nuts that were growing from the trees. The natural resources were the medicine. It
Yeah.
was the fish. It were all of these things that were natural resources. We just didn't take it. We
Yeah.
stewarded it.
Right, but that's
So,
why I wonder
yeah.
if there's a word, does
Rich
the
would
word
know.
natural resource exist? Because it seems like well, I guess it could if it's sustainable, but maybe, I don't know.
Rich might know the Abenaki word for it.
Sure. That's a great question. Sometimes the omission of something, the lack of something, can speak volumes.
Yeah.
And so I think my short answer to you is that in the Abenaki language, there is no word for nature.
Hmm.
It is not a separate thing. You do not have man and nature,
Yeah.
to use the name of the book. You just have creation, all of it. These are family. We are a part of them. They are part of us. There is no nature. And so when you get into a reductive system where you see things as separate, man and nature, then you are allowed to see them as separate and not being equal, and it's something that you can take. But if they are family, and if you are connected to them, you are now responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to take, you also have to give back. This is a relationship, and it is reciprocal, and it is mutual. And so there is no nature. There's just all of it. It's all the same. And all it does is keep changing. And when you become involved in a relationship with some other one or some other thing, which you might call resource in English, you are entering into a relationship with it, and it's going to change. Something's going to shift in that dynamic. If you're, burning firewood or using water to cook with, something is going to change, but there is a reciprocal responsibility involved there, and you're going to give back, and you need to be paying attention. Is that change keeping things in balance? This is your operative word, balance. And if you do something too much for too long and it goes out of balance, which is what's happening on a planetary scale, you need to change your behavior and the decisions that you're making. That's the opportunity that is presented to us every day and every moment. It's in front of us right now. And you folks, in the discharge of your responsibilities, the positions that you're in, that's what you're faced with. Granted, the program, the train is often being driven by somebody else. And so you can't have the freedom to make those changes that might be moving us toward balance as in the best manner possible. I mean, we're hurtling toward a precipice, right? We just see that. It's probably not going to change. We're dealing with climate change mitigation now. It's all about what are we going to do to prepare ourselves, because we haven't made the changes that would have led us away from this position. It's coming. It's coming. We still have a responsibility. We still do. We are not relieved of that responsibility. It's still coming. So make the best decisions you possibly can. And we have to stop kicking the can down the road. And that is informed by values. And a culture has a set of values, and we can learn from each other. We have to recognize that our cultural values are not sustainable. They are not. And so natural resources, we have to change that. Those are your relations. That's your family. They are not resources. I deal with this even like in the work I do with the tribe. I am what some people might call a cultural resource officer, cultural resource person. I'm not. I'm a cultural relations person. It's not a resource. Another way of looking at things.
Mhm. Thank you.
We have questions in the chat as well. Should probably, you go ahead. but
Okay.
then-
Thank you for this. It's really great to be here. I'm Karina Daly with Vermont Natural Resources Council. And I, for the past couple of years, I've been working to work on dam removal projects throughout the state and reconnect rivers. And the biggest part of that charge is gaining community support and I just seek your advice on how best to do that, because I hear everything you're saying, and I want the opportunity for everyone in these communities to be at the table and to hear that too, and to just understand the ecological value of reconnecting rivers and places and prioritizing that based on watersheds, and working as a community to do that. So I'm just asking for your advice and recommendations on that collaboration and community support and values mapping at a local level.
Yeah, I can tell working in the political world and working with a lot of agencies, because we're often the minority of the group, we have to lay it out to convince someone, why is it in your best interest that we do something? Or even if it's not in your best interest, is it the right thing to do and does it benefit certain things? Humans tend to think of everything that is, this is my land. I have a deed for it. This is my pasture, which I grow my hay to feed my cows. And when I don't have enough, I'm going to get somebody else's resource or thing so that it becomes mine. It's all about mine, mine, mine. And we always approach things that, how can you own a resource when you share it with other living beings like the, so if you are digging up all the soil, what are you leaving for the natural plants and animals that you might think is a weed, but it's actually food for something else, or even for us? Or the same thing with, what are you leaving in the fields for the deer who also eat the grasses that grow on that? So when it comes to dams, humans are always saying, well, what is it going to cost me? Or why are we even bothering with it when we have something else to do? Well, is that hindering the flow of fish that is going to hurt people a mile or two upstream who don't have access to those fish because they can't migrate up there anymore? Like, is it preventing someone from passing, do you know how hard it is to port a 75-pound canoe or kayak around a dam when you're trying to get through the woods? Because you can't just walk up the dam. So are you creating those ways for animals to be unimpeded? Are you creating an area where people can also be reconnected to that land, and that the dam hinders it, why it should be removed? Because now you can participate in it. You have to, even though unfortunately we look at a 360 view, most humans and most Europeans look at it for their interest or the human need, not for the everything around it. So you have to convince them in their mindset of why it's important to be done, but also look at it in a holistic 360 view and tell them why you need to do it. Because humans are into instant gratification. And if they can't get it done yesterday or today or tomorrow, or it's going to hit them in the pocket, they tend to avoid it. So you just have to, everything we do, Rich will tell you, takes years. Everything we try to accomplish is never a short-term thing. So I would say, keep working at it, keep trying to convince people. And And if it was put there for a human reason, like a hydroelectric dam, and you're not going to use it anymore, then keep going back to this is the state it was in prior to your, and why that's important. And if you can't convince them, then create laws or use money to try to do it yourself, right? Because that's the other option, is find ways to get it done within the purview of your control or your influence.
So there are questions online, and I want to just do a time check. It's 10:15, and I think we're ballpark looking to wrap this up at like 10:30-ish. So we can get to the questions. Appreciate your help with that, Chris.
Yeah, so Melody already answered one of them, so I'm gonna skip that one,
Okay.
but I'm gonna go to Laura. Laura says, if you are restoring a stream bank, are you thinking of creating a permanent sustained boundary? Or are you realizing a stream bank is an impermanent thing? Streams move, they are dynamic. As Rich said, everything is changes all the time. A balanced stream bank will gradually change, not as dramatically as when you try to riprap it. I'm not sure about that last sentence, but thinking about what a stream bank is, should be part of restoring a stream bank. So I think that maybe was a comment rather than a question.
Well, I think just Chris, in a general sense, it's like when you raise kids. Like I can think of a million things I could have done better with my kids, but I made the best decision with the information I had at the time. So I think any project you do, you have to take a holistic view, but do the best you can with the information you have at the time. And as things change, then they change. That's the natural way of things. But I think if you need to support a stream bed from erosion, then that is part of the project, what makes that last longer, so it's not apt to change. So I'm just saying is it's not a simple answer, but you have to make the best decisions on what you can do long-term with the information you have, in my opinion.
Yeah. And there's actually quite a long conversation here in the chat. I'll try to remember to save the chat. But I do think there's one more. I think it's actually a question. Sean White asks, do you have an opinion about active restoration? Oops, just moved. Active restoration efforts versus a more passive option, letting nature take its course to allow forest regeneration, floodplain restoration, etc.
I don't know, Rich and Mel, you want to jump in first?
I can say a couple things there. I think, again, it's a lot about attitudes and values. Passive, active, everything is active. And where things start to break down is when we only allow the right of agency to human beings. We are the ones making the decision whether it is active or passive. If we're not involved with it, and the river is doing what it does, that is not at all passive. That is completely active. The river has agency as well, and everyone that lives with it and in it and of it, that has agency. So there is no active or passive there. You might look at it more in terms of coercion or not. Sometimes you do have to take stronger measures. Of course, when things are moving out of balance, you need to do something. You are called to respond. What are the long-term effects on everyone, though? Riprap is seldom a good answer. The riprap is there to protect the concept of private property. Property is not private. It is not owned. We are owned by the land. So we need to start shifting that away from a position of coercion into cooperation and collaboration. Put yourself on the circle, not on the line or not on the top of the pyramid. Put yourself on the circle. Riprap may be needed sometimes, but we've made a lot of poor decisions in the past. Let's face it. There are some really good initiatives to move away from those kind of settlement patterns and usage patterns. I'm glad to see that. Keep it up. You guys are doing good work.
So Elizabeth Beal also has a question. She thanks the speakers and she says, you talk about how vital water is and how you need to think on the basis of watersheds when thinking about how to add the vitamins. The land is separated and fragmented by state boundaries that don't match watershed boundaries. Do you have any suggestions for how to be able to create holistic solutions that span throughout the drainage basin?
I don't know if Mel, I keep going back to humans being the way they are. Okay, let me give you a quick example of creating laws that make it cohesive, right? As you know, Fish and Wildlife in the state owns all waterways. It's all public. You can walk up and down it. So there is a sense of connectivity and continuity within the actual water and the stream beds because they own so many feet from the river, or at least part of the river and the watersheds. So there is some continuity you could work within to then make it viable as it, right? But it's like you try to pass laws that will work for everybody. So for instance, the bottle redemption, everybody used to find them on side the roads because people toss them out the window, whatever. Then they created a law that says, okay, there'll be some people that always do the wrong thing. There'll be some people that always do the good thing. How do we change the balance of the 80% or the 70% that are on the fence? Well, once they created the bottle deposit law, people started saving them for the Boy Scouts. They started saving them for the kids. They might return them. And then those bad actors who threw them outside the window, you had kids go, or people who wanted to collect the bottles going up and down the roads, picking them up so they can cash them in to get a candy bar or something. So you're creating legislation in a way that is making 70% of the people lean towards doing the right thing. And then those who don't do the right thing, you have some sort of mitigation for it because you don't have to worry about the people always doing the right thing. So I think you have to continue to work on legislation to give you that continuity and, you know, within the framework you have, but then also working with those partners who will be part of that continuity, whether it be the state, Fish and Wildlife, or other people who own part of those riverbanks and those right of ways where you can put those things in. Or towns ordinances or other type of things. So that would be, until you can get to that holistic view, you have to work within the confines that you have. And I think you keep changing it to go back to balance, just sort of like what Rich keeps saying, going back to balance.
That's all that's in here.
Nice.
Somebody's got their hand raised. And the
Neil King.
Feel free, if you want to speak out there, that's Neil, I think. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hey, Chris, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, great. This is fantastic. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us today. And I have the privilege of working with the team that's working on standing up Act 76. It's a huge effort, and the knowledge that we're hearing around the table today, I think is really interesting and informative. And I wanted to ask whomever wants to, to provide an opinion. I really liked, I heard some reference to sort of agroforestry in floodplain areas. I heard reference to different types of plantings that we might do to be more beneficial to plants, to animals, to people. And I'm just wondering how we can get that sort of more specific knowledge into the hands of the service providers and their basin councils, who are all sort of sitting around and listening to this today. The expertise is there. Where can we access it?
Well, I also think that there are so few of us who have some of the knowledge, and then there are so many of you. We are always asked to participate, and we don't always have the financial resources or the resources to do it. I would say forums like this, where you could use us as advisory type people, or other types where we can affect more people than just a one-to-one committee. I mean, Rich will tell you, we're so inundated with sitting on boards and commissions and stuff that we don't even have time to breathe sometimes. That we care about the environment, we want to be engaged, but it has to be in a way that's sustainable for us. Not only from a financial standpoint where we can hire people to be those consultants, or to be in a way like we are today, where we're reaching 100 people and there's 3 of us. So we're giving information to many people. So that's my suggestion. I don't know if Mel and Rich has any comment on ways that some of this can be shared.
I just put a little note in the chat. I think we're doing it right now. To the degree that we become aware of each other, agencies and organizations can host these discussions in these forums, record them, send them out to your colleagues and your peers, your friends, your enemies, and let's just magnify it, multiply it, the ripple effect. And I apologize, I have to jump off at 10:30. I have another thing, as Don said, too busy. But thank you very, very much for listening. And
Thank you.
I want to also say that not every Native person is an environmentalist, right? Not everybody, I mean, we're human too, so you have to pick the right partners and the people who have the knowledge and that kind of work with you. And the only way you would know that is by working through us and the people that we trust that could give you the right information. Because like I said, most people think just because you're Native, you might be automatically connected, to the earth and have all this knowledge, when we're humans too. So I just want you to be aware of, you have to get the right resources too, not just someone because they're Indian or because they're an environmentalist or whatever it is.
I just wanted to maybe follow up quickly with a quick just a quick language check. It wasn't about trying to use and or appropriate
Oh yeah.
knowledge. I just wanted to kind of put that on the table and state it. It's really about being able to work together and in an even improved system.
And I didn't take it that way. So
Yep, fair enough. Yeah, very good.
Dan Albrecht from Chittenden County Regional Planning, and we are the clean water service provider for the little streams in between, because it's northern Lake Champlain direct. So it's not the it's defined by, it's not the Missisquoi, it's not the Lamoille, and it's not the Winooski. So thanks all to the presenters. Very, very good information. And I think as a clean water service provider, when we're going to be reviewing projects, when I hear the speakers, I hear that deep sense of connection. And I also know that it's a natural human tendency to want to have connection to place. And so whether we're Native or longtime residents of Vermont or new residents of Vermont, people want that connectivity. And I think to the extent that we can all reinforce it, and then the projects that all the clean water service providers will review, to the extent that people can and get a community element to a project, it builds a knowledge base. Say some kids planted a tree, and then they can be like, they come back, go away, come back from college or whatever. Hey, I remember this little project. Look at that. It's got nuts on it now and stuff like that. And now we're making an artisanal nut bread to sell at the farmer's market, So there's all these kinds of, I think, and that builds that sustainability because you build that connection. So I think that's one of the lessons that I learned today, and I hope we can all appreciate that.
yeah, they're the future stewards of that place. So that's what I said. When you connect your local community with place, they are also the stewards of that place, and they are invested in what happens in that place. So the more you connect local people with that section of place, they're going to care and take care of it more and create ways to invite them in to that space to use it. And I think that's the model of making it successfully or sustainable.
We're right at 10:30 and Rich might be dropping off, or he might have dropped off. He did. All right. Well, I'll thank him anyway. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Melody. Thank you, Chief Don. I hear you when you say you feel overwhelmed with your boards and obligations and you'd like to talk to larger groups. But selfishly, I hope that we can keep you engaged with this work, because I don't know about you, but hearing it once is not enough. Like having you and the others involved in some sort of, doesn't have to be every meeting, but some more engagement I think I would welcome that. And getting a reminder of your perspective would be helpful as we move along, and we can think about creative ways to do that that works. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you again to Chris Stepanek, Professor Stepanek. And yeah, I think we're going to sign off from Internet World. And thank you all for participating out there and listening in. And hopefully more to come.